Mark, Laura, and Evan Henson vanished from their home in the dead of night, leaving behind overturned furniture, a shattered lamp, and a 911 call that ended in complete silence. What happened inside that house would shock a quiet town and defy every explanation. It began just after midnight when the county S911 center received a call that would unsettle the quiet community of Willow Creek for months to come. The dispatcher, a young woman working her first overnight shift alone, heard only panicked breathing at first. Quick, shallow gasps, like someone trying to whisper and scream at the same time. Then came the words that made her sit up straight. "Someone is in the house." Before she could ask for an address, the sound of breaking glass erupted through the line, followed by a low thud and the faint shuffle of feet. The caller's voice trembled, whispering something unintelligible, and then the line went dead. The call lasted exactly 22 seconds. 3 patrol units were dispatched to the address associated with the phone signal, 1147 Maple Drive. It was a small, 2-story home with a white fence and a yard that always looked freshly cut, even in winter. Nothing about the neighborhood seemed dangerous. The street was lined with parked cars, porch lights glowing softly, and the sound of sprinklers in the distance. But that night, the silence was heavy, and the air smelled faintly of smoke as the first officers stepped out of their vehicles. The front door was open. It swayed slightly in the cool breeze, creaking on its hinges as if inviting them in. Flashlights cut through the darkness, scanning the living room where furniture had been knocked over. A couch cushion lay halfway across the floor, a picture frame was shattered, and a small trail of mud led from the doorway into the hallway. The television was still on, showing nothing but static. A faint hum from the refrigerator filled the air, but the rest of the house was eerily still. The officers moved carefully, weapons drawn, calling out but getting no answer. They cleared each room one by one. The kitchen lights flickered as they passed, casting quick, jagged shadows across the walls. It looked like a struggle had taken place, but there were no signs of forced entry from outside. Everything pointed to the intruder either knowing the family or already being inside when the call was made. In the kitchen, a smartphone rested on the counter, its screen glowing faintly. A recording app was still open, still running. When one officer tapped it, the playback began instantly. The sound of hurried footsteps filled the kitchen, followed by a man's voice shouting something muffled in the distance. Then a loud crash, glass, maybe a window, and a deep, distorted sound that didn't quite match any human noise. It was low, drawn out, and strange enough to make the officers exchange uneasy glances. They found no one inside the house, not even the family who lived there. The rooms were empty, beds unmade, clothes left out as if people had vanished mid-routine. A faint trace of smoke still lingered in the air, strongest near the back door. The last thing they noticed before leaving was the clock on the wall above the television. It had stopped at 12:17 a.m., the same minute the 911 call ended. By the following morning, the story had already spread across Willow Creek. Police cars had lined Maple Drive overnight, their flashing lights turning the quiet street into a scene of unease. Reporters arrived before sunrise asking neighbors what they had seen, but no one had any clear answers. Everyone in town knew the Hensons, a friendly, ordinary family that kept to themselves and never caused trouble. Mark worked as a contractor, often seen leaving early in his truck. Laura taught part-time at a preschool, and their 17-year-old son, Evan, was known for fixing bikes in the garage after school. They were the kind of family people described as normal until that night. Inside the house, investigators found an unsettling stillness. Nothing had been taken, no signs of robbery. The family's wallets, phones, and keys were left untouched on the counter. The vehicles were parked neatly in the driveway, both locked. It was as though the Hensons had simply disappeared between one breath and the next. The kitchen floor was smeared with mud, leading toward the back door, where the frame bore deep scratches that didn't match any known tool marks. A handprint of dark red stood out against the refrigerator door, half smudged, half dried. The fingerprint analysts confirmed it belonged to Laura Henson, though no one could determine how much blood had been lost or from where it came. Detectives began reconstructing the family's final day. Surveillance footage from a nearby gas station showed Mark stopping to buy coffee around 8 p.m. He appeared calm, spoke casually to the cashier, and drove off without incident. At 9:12 p.m., a delivery driver reported seeing lights flicker inside the Henson home as he passed by, but nothing seemed out of place. By 11:57 p.m., the 911 call had been made, marking the last trace of the family. When officers canvassed the neighborhood, several residents mentioned strange noises in recent weeks. One woman recalled hearing low growls coming from the woods behind the property. Another claimed she saw flashes of light among the trees, like someone using a camera in the dark. Laura herself had reportedly called animal control a few days earlier, describing something moving around the edge of their backyard at night. She said it wasn't a person, but she couldn't describe what it was either. The officer who took her report dismissed it as coyotes or raccoons, common in the area. Investigators extended their search into the woods. It didn't take long before they found evidence that turned the case from strange to disturbing. Hidden beneath layers of fallen leaves were small patches of charred ground, burnt circles surrounded by melted plastic and glass fragments. Each circle was about the same size, roughly 3 feet wide, and appeared to have been made deliberately. The soil within them was blackened as though from extreme heat, but there were no signs of accelerants or fuel. Samples were collected, but tests revealed nothing conclusive. By dusk, the search team returned empty-handed, unsettled by what they couldn't explain. The forest felt wrong, as if every sound had been swallowed by the trees. When they looked back toward the Henson house, its dark windows reflected the red sunset like watching eyes. No one could shake the feeling that something had happened there, something that hadn't ended when the family vanished. The video recovered from the kitchen counter became the centerpiece of the investigation, and forensic analysts worked around the clock to examine every frame. What had at first seemed like a simple recording quickly turned into something far more disturbing. The footage showed Mark setting up a small tabletop camera near the kitchen counter, positioned to face the front door. He appeared tense, constantly glancing over his shoulder as though he knew someone or something was watching. The camera captured him fiddling with his keys, pacing back and forth, and occasionally peering out the window. There were no signs of anyone else entering the room, yet the unease was palpable. Minutes passed on the recording, each second stretching with an almost unbearable tension. Then, faintly at first, the sound of knocks echoed through the house. They were heavy, deliberate, and irregular, as if testing each door in turn. Mark froze entirely, his body rigid and eyes wide. The front door moved slightly, the old hinges squeaking under a force that could not be explained. The camera caught a shadow crossing the doorway, a figure that seemed taller than any intruder Mark could expect. It moved slowly, deliberately, without sound. When the footage glitched, it was as though the shadow had entered the room, but nothing appeared on the screen. Then came the distortion. Static filled the video for several seconds, flickering white and black, warping the image so that it was nearly impossible to see anything clearly. The sound changed, too. Breathing, soft at first, grew louder and uneven, layered with something that resembled faint whispers. Frame by frame, analysts noticed a figure at the edge of the hallway, black and shapeless, standing motionless as if waiting. The timestamp revealed something impossible. While only 30 seconds had passed in real time, the clock on the wall behind Mark jumped ahead 20 minutes. There was no explanation for the discrepancy, and attempts to stabilize the video only produced more strange anomalies. Every time investigators copied or moved the file, the sound changed. The breathing deepened, scratching noises appeared, and a faint, almost human laugh could be heard in the background. Experts speculated that the video had somehow been corrupted by the unusual conditions in the house, but no one could fully account for the dark figure caught in the footage. Some frames suggested movement too rapid for a human, while others made it appear as if the figure was bending and stretching unnaturally. The more time detectives spent reviewing the footage, the more they noticed subtle inconsistencies. Objects in the room seemed to shift slightly between frames, and reflections in mirrors and windows appeared distorted. In one brief moment, the refrigerator door swung open by itself, yet no one was near it. On the kitchen counter, the phone that had been recording seemed to vibrate faintly, as though powered by some unseen force. Analysts tried to recreate the sequence in the house, but nothing mirrored what the video had captured. By the end of the third day of analysis, the video had become a source of obsession for the investigative team. Officers reported a sense of unease when reviewing the footage, describing a feeling of being watched even outside the house. They noted that the shadow appeared closer each time they returned to the footage, as if it was aware of their scrutiny. Some refused to continue, claiming headaches, nausea, or an overwhelming sense of dread. Despite all technical attempts to explain or correct the recording, the footage remained an unbroken testament to something beyond the ordinary, a moment frozen in time that no one could rationally explain. The house itself had become a silent accomplice, holding secrets in every frame that no one could fully understand. Days after the video was analyzed, a specialized search team returned to the Henson house, hoping to uncover additional evidence that could explain the family's disappearance. The house had grown colder in the intervening weeks, and neighbors reported an eerie quiet that blanketed the street at night. As the team entered, the first thing they noticed was a subtle shift in the interior. Furniture that had been overturned during the initial investigation now appeared to be arranged neatly, as if no struggle had ever occurred. The broken lamp that had lain on the floor was gone, replaced by its intact counterpart from another room, though no one admitted to moving it. The walls and floors appeared unchanged, yet there was a sense of movement, like the house itself had breathed while no one was watching. The clock on the kitchen wall became the first truly unnerving detail. Investigators had photographed it during the initial search, noting its frozen hands at 12:17 a.m., the exact minute the 911 call ended. This time, the hands had moved backward, ticking steadily in reverse. One officer, staring too long, swore the numbers on the clock blurred and twisted, making it impossible to read. Shadows seemed to flicker along the ceilings, stretching longer and darker than the angles of the lights would allow. Every so often, a soft scratching noise echoed from within the walls, and the floorboards creaked under invisible weight. After about 30 minutes, one of the officers went missing. His body camera continued recording, showing him moving toward the staircase. He was alone. Yet the footage revealed something impossible. A shadow flickered across the hallway behind him, dark and amorphous, bending around the corners as if avoiding detection. The officer spun suddenly, his flashlight swinging wildly. The camera fell to the floor, and the feed went dark for a few seconds. When it resumed, the officer was gone, leaving only his flashlight beam trembling on the stairs. Despite an extensive search, he was never found. The remaining team members tried to maintain composure, but the house's effect on them was immediate. Some reported sudden dizziness, nausea, and a tightening in their chests. Phones rang repeatedly with no caller, and each time they answered, only the sound of faint, irregular breathing filled the line. Some members claimed to hear footsteps following them, soft at first, then heavier and more deliberate as they moved through the rooms. The air felt thick, almost viscous, making each step a physical effort. By the time the team left, several officers refused to re-enter the house under any circumstances. 2 resigned in the following weeks, citing nightmares, persistent anxiety, and a sensation of being watched wherever they went. Even police headquarters seemed affected. Security cameras captured brief flashes of black shapes at the edges of rooms, and unexplained static appeared on monitors. Attempts to document or photograph the interior were inconsistent. The camera lenses fogged inexplicably, and photographs developed with streaks of darkness across key areas. The Henson house became sealed off, a warning to anyone who approached. Over time, it acquired a reputation among locals as more than just the site of a crime. It was something alive, something capable of interacting with the world around it. People reported lights flickering in empty windows and the occasional faint knocking at the front door late at night. Each report added to the growing sense that the house had its own agenda, one that no investigator, no expert, and no resident could predict or control. It existed as a space of chaos and mystery, a place where the boundaries between reality and something darker were impossible to define. Months passed, and the Henson house remained abandoned, its reputation spreading beyond Willow Creek. Few dared approach it, and those who did spoke of sudden chills and the unsettling feeling of being watched. Eventually, a real estate investor purchased the property, eager to renovate and resell. He ignored warnings about the house's history, seeing only a neglected structure with potential. During the early stages of demolition, workers discovered a door concealed beneath the kitchen tiles, cleverly hidden so that previous investigators had overlooked it. The door was old, heavy, and coated in layers of dust and grime, as if it had not been opened in decades. When the basement was finally revealed, the air was frigid and carried the faint metallic tang of decay. Flashlights illuminated a narrow stairway leading down into darkness, the walls lined with damp stone. The team descended cautiously, calling out as they went, but no response came. At the bottom, they found a room roughly 12 feet square, bare except for a small pile of ash in the center and 3 shapes arranged around it. At first, it was unclear what the shapes were, but as the light fell across them, the investigators realized with horror that they were human bodies, decomposed but still identifiable. DNA testing confirmed the unthinkable. The bodies belonged to Mark, Laura, and Evan Henson. The positioning of the bodies was strange. Each had been placed deliberately around the ash, forming a near-perfect circle. The ash itself contained traces of melted plastic, identical to fragments found in the forest behind the house weeks earlier. Investigators could not determine how the family had ended up in the basement, especially given the absence of any prior signs of a hidden level. Blueprints of the house did not include the basement. Even construction records showed no plans for such a structure. The discovery defied conventional explanation, raising more questions than answers. Forensic analysis offered no definitive cause of death. There were no external wounds beyond superficial scratches and bruises, and toxicology reports revealed nothing. The coroner listed the deaths as undetermined, leaving investigators frustrated and uneasy. Evidence from the basement suggested that some kind of ritualistic behavior had occurred, yet there was no record of anyone else entering the house. It was as if the house itself had claimed the family, or that some unknown force had guided them into the hidden chamber. Local residents claimed that strange phenomena continued long after the discovery. Lights flickered unpredictably in the empty house. Shadows moved independently of their sources, and the occasional knocking could still be heard from the front door, exactly 3 knocks in rhythm with the fateful 911 call. Investigators reported hearing breathing and laughter in empty rooms, and cameras set up to monitor the house malfunctioned in ways that no technical expert could explain. The Henson house became a sealed site, marked as dangerous and off-limits. Yet it continued to draw attention from thrill seekers, journalists, and the curious. The case remains unsolved. Despite exhaustive investigations, no clear explanation exists for the family's disappearance, the hidden basement, or the anomalies recorded on video. The home itself seems to retain some memory of the chaos that unfolded within its walls, a lingering presence that defies understanding. For those who study it, the house is a warning. Some places are more than structures, more than wood and stone. Some places carry secrets too dark and intricate for ordinary comprehension, and the Henson house in Willow Creek is one of them, waiting silently for its next visitor.